I get started, man, I just got to tell you guys a story about how special it is for me to be here tonight. Back in 2007, I got radically saved, right? And about 2 months later, I went to a church called Cornerstone Church in Nashville, Tennessee, to hear a young man named Matthew Barnett speak. And he talked about this miraculous story about how he came to purchase this place that he called the Dream Center. And I tell you what, I was blown away about all the things that he said were going on out here at the Dream Center. So fast forward a year later, man, in 2008, I came from North Carolina to the Celebrate Recovery Summit, my first summit in Lake Forest, California. And I was here with 2 other guys. And I told them, man, we got to go check out this place called the Dream Center, you know. And they never heard of it. So I brought them here after the summit. It was a Saturday morning. And I remember we got here and we came in and they said, well, we don't do tours on Saturday. And I was pretty bummed out, you know. So we were walking around the parking lot out there and this priest came out and he said, what are y'all up to? And we told him that we had come and they just, and we couldn't get a tour. And he said, well, come on in. And man, he gave us a behind the scenes tour like nobody's business, right? So a couple years later, in 2010, I was back out here from the Celebrate Recovery Summit again. I had my new wife with me, and I had to bring her over here because I'm just blown away. I was blown away then by what God is doing, what He was doing at the Dream Center, and what He's continuing to do at the Dream Center. And man, tonight, I get to be a small part of what God's up to here, man, and I just can't tell you what that means to me. So thank you guys for having me here tonight. So let's start it like this. 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the same comfort we ourselves have received from God. My name is Jeff. And I'm a believer in recovery from drug addiction. I'll start by saying that I come from as normal a family as all you guys. That's right. They're completely screwed up. And actually, my family life growing up wasn't too bad. But my father was an alcoholic who fought in Korea and Vietnam, and that presented problems of its own. You know, when my father drank, he was physically abusive to my mother, and he was mentally abusive to us kids. But they're nothing at all like me. They all went to college and into the business world. Me, I grew up as a heavy kid that was picked on and scared. And in the summer of 1976, at 13 years old, I smoked marijuana and drank alcohol for the first time. Well, at last, I was accepted by some cool kids. So I started drinking, getting high on a regular basis. I also got into weightlifting and boxing in high school and decided that I would never be picked on again. So fighting, drinking, getting high, all became normal for me in my teenage years. Well, at 19, I joined the Army. I realized that drinking and fighting were all I wanted to do when I wasn't at work. And I was soon shot in the leg in a bar fight. This took me off my feet for quite a while. And as I recuperated, I again put on weight. Well, at 5'8" and over 300 pounds, I didn't fit in with the other soldiers. But I had bought a motorcycle for cheap transportation to work. And I started spending a lot of time at the biker bars. You know, before long, I realized that the motorcycle clubs, they accepted almost anybody, especially violent drug and alcohol abusers like me. So again, I found a place where I fit in. I was big, I was angry, I was violent. And in the biker world, the meanest, nastiest guy in the bunch ran the show. So I worked at being that guy. I physically abused my wife. I would get into bloody fights with my father anytime we drank together. I was involved in all kinds of violent and criminal behavior. It wasn't long before I became the president of the club. Well, I was in trouble with the Army constantly. So I soon went AWOL, ended up with a dishonorable discharge, and spent the next 15 years as the leader of 2 different motorcycle clubs. So in 1993, I met my second wife. She had a 6-month-old daughter. I fell in love with both of them. Slowly became more responsible. Eventually, I adopted my little girl. When she was around 4 years old, I decided I needed to leave the motorcycle club because I didn't want to die in some stupid bar fight. Caused her to grow up without a daddy. Unfortunately, I left the club, but I didn't leave the lifestyle. Alcohol, drugs, and violence. It's just who I was. So in 1998, my daughter was 5. My wife was done, and she filed for divorce. At this point, I got worse. But the one thing that kept me from slipping off the deep end completely was a misplaced sense of responsibility to my daughter. I thought I was a good dad. I didn't know what that looked like. I did spend every other weekend with her, and I took her to the bars with me at night. And at 6 years old, she was forced to experience violent behavior that would have been disturbing to most adults. I used her to meet and pick up women. I even rode her around on the interstate on my motorcycle when I was drunk. I can remember thinking how cute she was, carrying around an empty Jim Beam bottle and a cigarette, acting like daddy. I bragged about how I spent so much time with her. But the truth was I was completely unfit, and I should have been put in jail. At this time of my life, I was a functioning addict. I owned a successful business out of beach house, boats, trucks, motorcycles. I thought I was living the dream. Then Christmas of 2001, the first Christmas after my big sister died from pancreatic cancer, I tried crack cocaine, and I was almost instantly addicted. I quickly went through all my savings. I was able to convince my parents that my business needed some financial help. So they thought they were helping me by loaning me money and credit cards. But within another year, I caused them to go into a bankruptcy. I lost it all, including my daughter. Her mother had moved, taken her, wouldn't let me or my family know where she was. My very last memory of my daughter as a little girl was her buying me an 8-pack of cigarette lighters for my birthday. I thought I had everybody fooled. I couldn't even fool that little girl. It would be over 6 years before I spoke to her again. At this point, I came back to Fayetteville, North Carolina, where my parents lived, continued to lie and steal, do whatever else I had to do to get high. I started robbing drug dealers. Before long, there were a lot of people that wanted me dead. Well, my parents were really concerned for me. They finally convinced me to enter a treatment center. But, I did it only to please them. And I was soon having drugs delivered to me in the treatment center. It wasn't long before I was found out and I was kicked out. But again, I convinced my parents it wasn't the dope that had got me thrown out, that I had just broken some rules. Again, they helped me get a place to live, some furniture, some tools. I sold the furniture. I pawned the tools. And I remember talking to my dad into buying me groceries that I'd take back to the grocery store for the cash to spend on crack. Finally, at Christmas that year, I snuck into my parents' house and I stole the $100 bills that my mother intended as Christmas gifts for all the family members. It wasn't discovered until Christmas morning when they all open the empty envelopes. When my mother realized what I'd done, she wanted nothing more to do with me. She told me she'd buy me a one-way ticket anywhere in the country, but she didn't want me in North Carolina any longer. I'll never forget, my mom gave me, it was a little card, and she wrote her name and phone number on it. She asked me to please keep it in my pocket all the time, so she would at least be notified when my body was found. At this point, I was on the streets of Miami, Florida. I was stealing and robbing people, doing whatever else I had to do to get high there. It didn't take me too long to realize again that I would soon be dead or in prison. So after about a month on the streets of Miami, I reached out to my parents again. They made a deal with me that if I would really commit to a 1.5-year treatment program, they'd let me come back to North Carolina. So I entered treatment again for all the wrong reasons. However, it was impossible to get drugs into this place. I decided I'd quit getting high, at least while I was there. Now this place, it was a Christian treatment center. But I wouldn't buy into any of that Jesus talk, and I was way too smart for all that. About 4 months into my stay, my old girlfriend called me, told me she'd inherited some money, and so she wanted me to leave treatment early and come to Minnesota. So I did. I left treatment more than a year early, never having taken my recovery seriously, never working the steps, never finding a sponsor, but feeling as though I was cured from my crack addiction. It'd be okay to drink and use other drugs. So when I got to Minnesota, we bought a motor home and decided to travel the country. We did this for about 6 months, partying the entire time. Now, only by the grace of God was I not back on crack. Not yet. And as we were traveling, we stopped in Nashville, Tennessee, and decided to buy a bar. Now, I'll give you guys just a little bit of advice tonight. Never leave treatment and buy a bar. We opened a biker bar, the filling station. And again, I thought I was living the dream. Booze, dope, prostitutes, gambling, violence, everything that I loved. And I owned the joint. And it would all lead me down one of the darkest paths I'd ever been on in my life. But as I was surrounded by darkness, God brought me a ray of light. His name was Doc Ray. The one thing I never expected to find in the bar was a preacher. Isaiah 59:1 says, "Surely the arm of the Lord is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear." Doc rode a motorcycle, and he hung out at the biker bars ministering to us as we needed it. He was really careful to not force religion on us. He just made sure that we knew that he cared. And he was always there in times of crisis, offering prayer and friendship. Doc became a good friend of mine, although I wasn't buying into any of his Jesus talk either. It was really clear that he cared about me and the other bikers in the bar. Now, within 6 months of buying the place, I was back to smoking crack. It didn't take too long for me to lose everything and become a homeless addict. My girlfriend left. I lost contact with Doc Ray and every other decent person in my life. For 2.5 years, I was homeless. I ate out of dumpsters, slept in the crawl spaces under people's houses. I was in and out of jail. Back in 2006, I was arrested over 30 times. I stole cars. I robbed people. I shoplifted. And I could always lie to my father and talk him into sending me money behind my mother's back. That almost caused him to get a divorce. My mother told me one time that she hoped one of us died, her or me. She just couldn't take it anymore, In March 1st of 2007, I'd been on a binge for days. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I ran out of drugs, but I still had money in my pocket. So at 3 in the morning in a ragged, falling apart, borrowed truck with expired tags, knowing there were warrants for my arrest and driving with no license, I headed into one of the worst dope spots in East Nashville. And of course, I was pulled over and arrested. By the way, when they arrested me that night, they weighed me in at 108 pounds. And I was covered with open sores due to staph infection. You can still see the white scars all over me. But going to jail that morning, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. I was arrested on a probation violation because of the nature of the charge. My dad, he couldn't bond me out this time. But you know what? I did finally get out. My dad came the 560 miles to Nashville, Tennessee to be there for me again. I didn't have anything except the clothes I was wearing. My dad helped me get a place to live, vehicles, clothes. I just wanted him to leave. I just wanted him to leave because I wanted to get high, you know? But then he did leave. And after he left, it hit me. I thought, what if next time I walk out of jail and he's done and there's nobody there for me? You know, I had what we call in recovery a moment of clarity, and I made a decision to quit getting high. I didn't know how, but I decided I was going to figure it out. But you know, I see the first time my father didn't bond me out, I hit bottom. I sometimes wonder how much sooner I might have had that moment of clarity if he wasn't enabling me. You know, it was all done in love. He thought he was keeping me alive. The truth is, he almost loved me to death. You know, as I made the decision to quit getting high, I tried to think of anybody I knew that didn't. And the only person I could think of was that biker preacher guy, Doc Ray. So I looked up his number. I called him. He was so happy to hear from me. He invited me to church. I still thought church was just a weekly inconvenience where a bunch of holy people got together and talk about how good they are, how bad the rest of us are, right? But I knew I had to get around some different kind of people than I had been spending time with. So I showed up that next Sunday, hair down to my waist, white t-shirt, blue jeans, and I was waiting for the judgment. You know, I was counting on the judgment. I didn't want to be there. But it never came. And those people were so sweet to me. They loved on me. They encouraged me. They told me I was valuable. They told me I was created for a purpose. So I made a decision to come back the next week. And that following week, I really had no idea what was in store for me. Kind of hard to describe. You know, I didn't come forward for an altar call. I didn't put my hand in the air. But I can tell you, on April 22nd, 2007, I had a real life encounter with Jesus Christ. My life was changed forever. You know, the psalmist says it like this in Psalm 42. He says, he lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the muck. He set my feet on a rock. He gave me a firm place to stand. You know, I have to mention how grateful I am to Doc Ray and his ministry to me. You know, Doc made sure I got home safely when I was too drunk to stand. He picked me up from jail when I was released. He was my friend when I didn't know how to be anybody's friend. He loved on me when I was unlovable. And he prayed for me when I was hurting. God accepted me right where I was, flaws and all, without judgment, without condemnation, without enabling me, without beating me over the head with the Bible. He was just kind and caring. And I don't know that God could have gotten through to me any other way. Within 3 weeks of my salvation, I attended a church dinner, and I sat by a couple I'd never met, Jim and Deb. I'll never forget them. I told them a little bit about my story. On Friday nights called Celebrate Recovery. Well, they invited me the following Friday, but I remember telling them how Jesus had delivered me from my addiction. I didn't need a recovery program. Well, they convinced me that I'd be able to make some Christian friends there, and so I finally agreed to go. But I remember I was terrified to walk into that church that night. Me, the guy that robbed drug dealers at gunpoint, I was scared to death to go in that place. I'll never forget. It was a rainy night. I sat in my truck, and I wouldn't go in until Jim and Deb showed up to walk me in. But once inside, man, I was amazed. I remember how freeing it was to attend a share group and to listen to others like me. I realized I wasn't alone in my struggle. I was able to be honest about myself without shame or embarrassment. I realized I didn't have to be perfect to be a Christian. You know, the love, acceptance, and freedom I felt at Celebrate Recovery, they were beyond comparison. And I can remember leaving CR on Friday nights, just thinking all week about getting back there the next Friday. Within 2 months of attending, I began working the Christ Center 12 steps, and I found a sponsor. I committed fully to the program. Look, I realized the Lord had delivered me from the drugs. But there was so much more than to just stop getting high. Man, the 12 steps. The 12 steps are the greatest discipleship tool I've ever seen. I think they're the fastest vehicle at moving someone towards the cross. The 12 steps took me through a healing process. It taught me how to live sober, how to handle this world as it is, not as I would have it. I did what my sponsor told me to do. I was accountable. I was honest. And for the first time in my life, I took correction well. I began to work the 12 steps and to apply the principles of my life on a daily basis. Wow. What a change in my life. I began passing out Bibles in drug neighborhoods, helping feed the homeless, volunteering in my church, and any other kind of service work I could find to do. Then Christmas of 2007, I'd been sober for 8 months, and my mother wanted to see me for the first time in 4 years. After a short visit, she asked me to move back home to North Carolina. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to God for this time as a sober Christian with my parents. You know, shortly after moving back to North Carolina, I plugged into a church. I met the senior pastor. He was excited about what I was doing and what I wanted to do. So I began seeking others to help me start a Celebrate Recovery ministry there. You know, being a leader in the Christ-centered recovery movement, and it's a movement, it's not a ministry, it's a movement. That's truly what God has called me to do. I came to know my wife at Celebrate Recovery. But you're not supposed to do that. I've never been one for the rules, right, baby? My daughter showed up at our wedding, and I was able to hug her for the first time in over 6 years. Yeah. Come on. I've made friendships I know will last a lifetime. I've had people I've grown up with whom I've not seen in years find healing and recovery and now come to church with me. I've had so many broken and damaged relationships restored and repaired, I can't even count them. And for over 16 years, I've had a front row seat. Man, you could read in the New Testament about Jesus opening blinded eyes and mending broken bones. But I'm here to tell you, there is nothing more miraculous than a healed heart. Right? That's what's going on right here. Jesus' miracle, the room's over, right? So you don't have to just read about it. You can come to Celebrate Recovery and see it in real life, right? I've learned that it's not about me and the blessings that come from doing for others and all that stuff I lost. Man, he's a God of restoration. He gave me back my family. You know, I was able to comfort my father daily during a long hospital stay, which ended with his death. And I was able to pray with him to receive Christ before he died. I spent 8 sober years, loving on my mother. She could count on me. And I was there for her until she took her last breath. And I'll never forget the day she told me how proud she was of the man that I'd become. My daughter, her mother died tragically while I was in my addiction. But now she has a father. She's forgiven me. God has restored our relationship. She even brags about me being her daddy. I have a beautiful Christian wife with a wonderful new family that love me. I have the most amazing friends in the world. I own a successful business. And glory to God, I don't have a Harley Davidson. I have a collection of Harley Davidsons. Priorities in your recovery are very important, right, Matt? Look, God has used me in many ways over the last 16 years. In 2008, I started to Celebrate Recovery at Mount Carmel Church in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I served as the ministry leader there for 7 years. In 2010, I came on board the Celebrate Recovery Southeastern team as a North Carolina state representative. And I served in that role for 7 years. In 2011, I finished school and I was ordained as a pastor. And I've come to realize that my decision to accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior has changed not only my life, the lives of my family, my friends, and so many others. God has turned my mess into his message. And I've been blessed to share my story all over the country in many different venues. Now, since accepting Christ, life is truly amazing, but it's not perfect, right? You know, in April of 2013, my wife and I separated. See, we just couldn't seem to get along. And the truth is, we married soon after meeting. Didn't take us long to realize we just weren't much alike. You know, although we had separated, we didn't want to give up on our marriage. I'm so grateful to my recovery family that loved on us and encouraged us through all of this. You know, we sought professional help by way of a Christian counselor. I'll tell you guys something. It took more than prayer. It took work and commitment. And then the miracle happened. We began to apply the principles of recovery to our marriage. Celebrate Recovery showed me that I couldn't blame or fix Pamela. I could only work on my part, my character defects. You know, God did a work of healing and restoration in our marriage as we both began to take responsibility rather than blaming one another. Today, we still got some issues, huh, sweetheart? But we're learning to accept the things in each other that we cannot change and to change the things in ourselves that we can. In 2016, After putting the biker lifestyle behind me for 9 years, associating that lifestyle with all my bad behavior, God told me it was okay to ride a motorcycle for Christ's sake. During the following weeks, He used me to start the Broken Chains. We're a fellowship of bikers and motorcycle enthusiasts who have found hope and healing in Jesus Christ through the Christ-centered recovery process, helping others to realize that change is possible. In 2017, I was asked to share my story at the Celebrate Recovery Summit. And I had no idea that John Baker, the founder of Celebrate Recovery, would ask me to join the CR national team. I served on the Celebrate Recovery national team for just over 6 years. It's been the honor of my life. But I recently stepped away to pursue what God had for me. You see, in 2017, I became a motorcycle missionary. And that just means that I'm a Christian biker using my appearance, my lifestyle, my motorcycle to break down barriers, keeping people from knowing the hope and freedom available in Jesus Christ. In the 6 years since, I've ridden my motorcycle just under 150,000 miles. I've been to churches all over the country to share, teach, preach. But man, where God is using me the most is out there. Out there at the gas stations, in the restaurants, in the motorcycle shops. Out there, man, people are dying, right? 100,000 in the last year from drug overdose. Every 4 minutes. Today, in the United States of America, 130 people will take their own lives. Why would anybody do that? You know, I recently read a book, and there was a story, it was a true story. It was December 17th, 1927, off the coast of Massachusetts. The United States destroyer had an accident with the United States submarine. And it said that it only took minutes for that submarine to sink about 100 feet deep to the ocean floor. You know, eventually all 40 men aboard that submarine died. But they said for 4 days, 6 men found their way into an air pocket in the hull of that submarine. And the deep sea divers would go down to the ocean floor, and they couldn't rescue those men, but they could communicate with them by tapping Morse code on the hull of that submarine. And they said the last message that they decoded from those men was, "Is there any hope? Is there any hope?" You know, you can live for 40 days with no food. You can live for 4 days with no water. You can even live for 4 minutes with no air. But you can't live for 4 seconds with no hope. And that's what people out there are asking. Is there any hope? And so that's what I do. I let them know that hope is real. And His name is Jesus. And I'm not alone, man, because in the last 6 years, Broken Chains, we've grown to about 5,000 members. And we're an army of hope dealers all over the country, in every state of the country, and 10 countries around the world. And we're letting people out there know about what's going on in here, right? Because when people out there find out about what's going on in here, they'll break the doors down to get in. And I'm so grateful to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for my salvation. And I'm grateful for Celebrate Recovery that has shown me how to plug into the power that He came that I could have for my life. 16 years later, you'll find me at Celebrate Recovery every week. It's a decision followed by a process. You see, the decision without the process, man, it just ain't getting you too far. You know, since I made the decision 16 years ago to quit getting high, I've been through the illness and death of my father, my mother, my big brother, my best friend in a tragic motorcycle accident. I've been through a marriage separation, a cancer diagnosis, and radiation treatments. I've dealt with despair, anger, frustration, but I'm sober today. Come on. And I'm sober today because I stay plugged in to the process. And I'm going to be okay. Because I don't have to turn to crack cocaine to deal with my problems anymore. I got you guys, right? Right? That's right. I got a forever family all over the world, man. I get to meet Jesus in every hug, every smile, every encouraging word. Today, one day at a time, I am living the dream. See, 5,902 days ago, all I wanted to do was quit getting high. That's all I wanted. I could have never planned or dreamed what God has done in my life since. But my life verse goes something like this. Genesis 50:20. What the enemy meant for my harm, God meant for my good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So look, I don't know what's going on in your life tonight. I don't know what your struggles are, what your problems are, what your hurts, your hang-ups, your habits are. But I can tell you this. What the enemy means for your harm, get a hold of that. Get a hold of that, man. Because if you'll make the decision and you'll plug into this process and you'll stay plugged into this process, God will clean you up from the inside out. He'll teach you how to live life on life's terms. And he'll give purpose to your pain. And he'll use you to reach back in that same ditch you've been in to pull others out. Yeah. Because hope is real. Healing is available. Change is possible. I know it is. Because it happened to me. See, I used to be a hopeless dope addict. And now I'm a dopeless hope addict. Thank y'all for letting me share.